नमस्कार, दक्ष नेपालमा यहाँलाई स्वागत छ। म सुगरिका केसी। कार्यक्रम दक्ष नेपाल वैदेशिक रोजगारीका लागि नेपाली श्रमिकहरूलाई भविष्यमा आवश्यक पर्ने सिपहरूको आवश्यकता पहिचान गर्ने उद्देश्यले संयुक्त राष्ट्र सङ्घीय निकाय IOM नेपालले कार्यान्वयन गरेको जेनेरेटिङ एभिडेन्स फर फ्युचर स्किल्स निड्स अफ माइग्रेन्ट वर्कर्स इन नेपाल परियोजना हो। यसलाई दक्षता, प्राविधिक व्यावसायिक शिक्षा तालिम सहकार्य कार्यक्रम अन्तर्गत युरोपियन युनियनको आर्थिक सहायतामा ब्रिटिश काउन्सिलले व्यवस्थापन गरेको छ। आजको कार्यक्रमलाई हामी सदाभन्दा अलि भिन्न तरिकाले प्रस्तुत गर्न गइरहेका छौं। कार्यक्रमको आजको अङ्कमा हामी युरोपियन युनियनले नेपालको टेक्निकल एजुकेसन र भोकेशनल ट्रेनिङको क्षेत्रमा के कस्ता काम गरिरहेको छ, यस परियोजना प्राविधिक व्यावसायिक शिक्षा तालिम समापन भएपछि यस क्षेत्रमा आगामी दिनमा के कस्ता कामहरू अघि बढ्नेछन् र आगामी योजना के रहेका छन् लगायतका विषयमा छलफल गर्नेछौँ। यसै सन्दर्भमा युरोपियन युनियनले नेपालको प्राविधिक शिक्षा र व्यावसायिक तालिमको क्षेत्रमा के कस्ता कार्यहरू गरिरहेको छ र भावी योजनाहरूको सेरोफेरोमा रही युरोपियन युनियनका राजदूत हर एक्सलेन्सी नोना डेप्रिजसँग गरिएको कुराकानी राख्न गइरहेका छौँ। Excellency, Namaskar. Welcome to Dakchya Nepal. We're so privileged to have you on our show. Excellency, why do the European Union support Nepal's technical and vocational education and trainings?
Well, namaste to all, and thank you very much for having me. Well, the short answer to your question is really, without quality education, there's no economic development. And for the long answer, we have to go back to the situation in Nepal nearly 10 years ago. At that time, we had the renewed European Union engagement with Nepal for 2014-2020. We had the 13th National Periodic Plan and also the Technical Vocational Education and Training Policy of 2012. So this was the time after the Comprehensive Peace Accord and before the Constitution and the earthquakes. And so already then, let's say 10 years ago, there was this dynamic in Nepal that is still familiar today, which was that Nepal is a young country. Nearly 50% of the population is regarded as young, and only another half of that young population was in active employment or education. 500,000 people enter the job market every year, but the same number also leave the country for foreign employment at that time, where economic growth rates in the country 10 years ago were about 10%. So of course, obviously, national plans and policies recognize the importance of technical vocational education and training for economic growth. So the rapid expansion of labor force also provided this potential opportunity, but there was the issue that there was a low level of formal education as a result of high level of school dropouts. So there were increasing skill gaps in both the formal and the informal sector. For example, there was already an increased demand for skilled workers in the local market because of capital investments, but those demands were not met. So this is why the European Union supported Nepal already long before that in school education development, and Nepal has made really tremendous progress in access to education. And then in 2014, we agreed to extend our support to technical vocational education and training, so that after the school education, in order to help Nepal grow economically along Nepal's own plans, of course, and to help Nepal tackle the skills and labor market needs that I mentioned before. That's why we had our support to the technical vocational education plan in Nepal. Then the earthquakes hit Nepal in 2015. The National Planning Commission, in close cooperation, of course, with the line ministries, with the development partners, we have post-disaster needs assessment, and both the civil society but also private sector were part of this process. And that assessment confirmed again that more than ever, the upgrading of skills and knowledge was one of the most important paths to a swift recovery and improved resilience of Nepal. To support Nepal in the technical vocational education training reform process through a program that we call EU-Nepal Practical Partnership for Technical Vocational Education and Training Reform. Important aspects of that program, just to summarize, is we work on education and TVET to support Nepal's own development pathway. And that's our commitment as a development partner globally.
Excellency, please tell us more about the partnership.
So we partner with the government of Nepal to support Nepal in its inclusive and sustainable growth. We agreed that we would focus on investments in human capital development and to create better employment opportunities. So that's what this practical partnership is about. It's to support both the public and the private sector in their own ways, and especially to emphasize on public-private partnership. We have seen big changes in the sector in the last few years, but what is really important to note and what is key everywhere is that the private sector is the core to effective technical vocational education and training. And without private sector involvement, there will always be a gap between the demand and the supplies. So in practice, it means bringing employers to the table with the institutions that are supposed to educate skills for the market. So we have facilitated that to put the private sector and the employers in their rightful place at the table and at the heart of TVET. So now I think we can see that the private sector is aware of the importance of their role in the TVET sector, and the private sector is motivated and interested to collaborate with the public authorities, as well as, of course, amongst themselves. And I would say similarly, the Ministry of Education and the Council for Technical Education and Vocational Training, CTEVT, and other relevant public sector organizations, we have supported them through capacity building, through trainings, through upgrading the labs with recent and relevant equipment, and also mainly through the establishment of this platform, this common platform for public-private dialogue, to open ways for this strong partnership between public and private sector.
Excellency, please give us an example of a public-private partnership model. How does it work? What does it mean, and who all are included?
So what is really important to note is that so we have supported several of these where we have representatives of the private sector and of the public sector working together, for example, to produce these guidelines on how to operate public-private partnerships in TVET. I think that's an important part of the work that we've done through this program, and we've done it in particular in three sectors: so tourism, construction, and agriculture, because those are three important sectors in TVET. So we've set up this public-private partnership working group. That's also really a unique example. So because this sets a platform where representatives of the public and the private sector, they can come together to discuss and to exchange views to make the TVET sector more balanced, more relevant, and also to meet the demands of the market. The public and the private sector in an agreement to work together in order to reduce the gap between the supply and the demand, or also to meet the employer's needs and to offer trainings to trainees on the most on-demand occupations. This is also a very good example of a public-private partnership. It's really working together for mutual benefits. So as an example, another example is 5 employers associations have also jointly signed an agreement with the Council for Technical Education and Vocational Training, and have handed over 30 occupational standards in those 3 sectors. It means that the employers help to identify and to standardize the skills that are needed in their business, and the schools then develop and teach the curricula. So the public and the private sector in these cases are also committed to continue this collaboration even after the completion of the project. Another example is that through this project, 3 centers of excellence have received latest equipment for their practical labs, based on the recommendations again of the relevant employers, so that this support would create swift opportunities for employment to the trainees. So in total, more than 3,000 Nepali citizens have directly benefited from this program, in addition to the improvement in the overall TVET sector. I'm also very proud and we're happy to share that the program has covered Also other aspects such as greening the sector, such as also having a JC component, which is gender equality and social inclusion, working of course with youth, working with local governments in line with the federalism, working with civil society, but also working with returning migrants as part of our COVID response. So it turned out to be a really very inclusive program.
Excellency, the project will end soon. What is the European Union's plan in the sector of TVET?
Well, every project has a start and has an end date, and this one has too. So it lasted for 6 years and it will end this year. It doesn't mean that our partnership and our dialogue will end. We have just renewed our engagement for the new sector support plan. That's a very big, important reform where we work with 8 other development partners and the government of Nepal, of course. So we still acknowledge the need for an effective TVET sector in Nepal, especially as Nepal is graduating from least developed country status towards middle income country by 2030. It is really essential that all people, regardless of their background, of their disadvantage, they must be able to access decent work and opportunities which can improve their lives. And TVET can deliver routes to these opportunities, but it also needs to be accessible to all. So I would say for the time being, we are awaiting the adoption of the TVET Act. That's very important, so we are hoping that this act could be adopted soon after the instatement of the new parliament, and it would really allow also the utilization of the government's TVET policy at the local level. And that's an important step that Nepal has to take to discuss the partnership. What is really important is that it's Nepal solutions for the challenges in Nepal, and that there are many things to discuss, and there also the role of local governments is very important to facilitate skills with demand, to be active on the labor market, and also the way the private sector is organized. There are many untapped economic value chains that could be worth looking at into tailored partnership. Many other development partners, our colleagues from Switzerland, from the World Bank, from the Asian Development Bank, are engaged in the TVET sector, while we still carefully assess if and how detailed we should engage in the future. Of course, it really depends on the government to bring the TVET Act forward and also the TVET strategic program to life now. So it's good to see that Nepal takes ownership of and is the full owner of the TVET process.
Thank you very much, Excellency. It was great having you on our show. Dhanyavad.
Thank you so much. Dhanyavad.
आजको कार्यक्रममा हामीले नियमित रूपमा प्रसारण गरिरहेको भन्दा फरक विषयमा केन्द्रित भई गरिएको कुराकानी प्रस्तुत गर्यौं। आशा छ कार्यक्रममा आज प्रस्तुत गरिएको विषयले टेक्निकल एजुकेसन र भोकेशनल ट्रेनिङमा भइरहेका कार्यहरू र आगामी दिनका योजनाका सम्बन्धमा पनि जानकारी भयो भन्ने विश्वास लिएका छौं। कार्यक्रमको आजको निर्धारित समय सकिएको छ। आगामी कार्यक्रममा नियमित विषयवस्तु समेटिएको प्रस्तुति सहित उपस्थित हुने नै छौं। आजलाई बिदा दिनुहोस्। हस्त नमस्ते।